All right, welcome everyone to the Recovery First podcast. I'm your host, Mike Todd. Tonight we've got a great show. We've got Dee H. He grew up on the Cherokee Reservation and picked up the first white chip in what is now the Carolina region of NA. We are live in Ask 'em Studios in Greenville, South Carolina tonight. This show is brought to you by the South Carolina Recovery Housing Association. They have gotten out a little over 800 plus units of naloxone kits to housing and recovery housing statewide in South Carolina. A little bit about Freedom Recovery Center. It's the Recovery First program is an initiative and community program in Greenville, South Carolina, supporting those who suffer from substance use disorder by providing access to treatment, recovery services, and permanent housing. All right, we've got some local events coming up. The second annual Jessica's Walk for Overdose will be on Friday, August 27th. We will meet at Pizza Bergamo in downtown Greenville and walk to Falls Park. I'll be there with my bullhorn. Last year we had about 100 people, a little over 100 people, and it looks like we've got that many that are going to show up this year. We want to thank the Step family for organizing this event. Favor Mini Golf will be on Sunday, August 15th at 6 p.m. For more details, contact Michael Crouch or Lee Huckins with Favor Oconee County. That number is 864-280-5579. Our friends at the Catawba Nation will be having a recovery event in September. It's the Catawba River Ramble for Recovery, September 11th. It starts at 8 a.m. This is a kayak race, so shout out to all the recovery warriors with the Catawba Nation. The Jesse May Harm Reduction bus will be moving to a new location. As a matter of fact, they were there last week. They'll be there again Friday. They'll be at the old Save More parking lot off Wade Hampton Boulevard. That's near the Motel 6 area. It's from 5 to 7 on Friday. They will be out there giving out naloxone, clean syringes, and spreading love, dignity, and the message of recovery all throughout the community. Also, the Upstate Recovery Coalition will be hosting a recovery festival and concert at the Charles E. Shipman Center in Greenville between 3 and 7. That's on 975 Foothills Road. We'll keep you updated on that. So we're here tonight with Dee H. He's one of my favorite people to talk to about the days of NA getting started in North and South Carolina. It's now known as the Carolina region. He also grew up on the Cherokee Reservation. All right, so we're here with Dee H, and I don't know what to say. He is one of my favorite people to talk to. It seems like every time I talk to him, I just kind of learn something new about history or recovery or something, and he's sitting across the table from me. You mean so much to me. And so we're going to talk about the days of NA getting started in North and South Carolina. That's now known as the Carolinas region. He also grew up on the Cherokee Reservation. So, Dee, how are you?
I'm fine. How you doing?
You're looking good, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Do I owe any money for that compliment?
Not at all. Okay. Not at all. And you know, I know you're okay with me saying this. You've had some health issues, and
yeah, that's true.
And you know, when we had COVID and everything going on, I would call you and make sure that you were being safe.
And I will always appreciate that.
Yeah. It's good to have you.
It's good to be here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, just like to document. And, we started this podcast, and one of the things we do is we have people on that have done things for the community. And you have done a lot for a lot of people. And I know you don't talk about it, or, it's just you have done so much. A lot of what you've done is you've made us laugh. You have made us laugh at times that we didn't feel like laughing. Life just seemed real bleak for a lot of us, but you kept that coming for us. So, but anyway, so what was it like growing up for you?
Let me respond real quick before answering that question. I'll just make a comment on what you just said. In that, I believe that humor is very healing in recovery. Yeah. And I know that in recovery, they talk about HALT, don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Yeah.
And they came back and they added the S on the end of it, meaning don't get too serious. Yeah. And I think that's important too, because I think people can get so they just need to loosen up, and just let and just go with the flow with recovery or whatever. We get it's amazing how some people can come in here and they can just they work their way out of the program because they just don't allow themselves to relax and enjoy recovery, whatever. They think recovery is a job. It's something you got to work at. It's got to, in the sense that it's it's got to be so serious that nobody can crack a smile, because if you crack a smile, then someone's going to assume that you're not taking recovery seriously, which is, of course, not true. And what's your question again? I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I appreciate you talking about that, because, heck, I'm going to elaborate on that just a little bit, because you have been kind of been a guiding force with that. Even like with me, and with a lot of people. You've taught us how to not take stuff so seriously. But no, the question was, and we're going to be all over the place because that's just me and you, but what was it like growing up for you?
On the reservation?
On the reservation.
Yeah, I can go back, as far as the res goes, I can go back pretty well document at least 7 generations back on as far as the reservation and the Eastern Band Cherokee blood in the family or whatever. And it was like, but growing up, it was, and I was born in 1955 or whatever, so when I was a child on the res or whatever, it was like being in a third world country in a lot of ways. And there was, it was just, it was very poor. I always, I hear people say, well, the Eastern Band Cherokee were a lot better off than other tribes financially or whatever else, but it was a lot of very poor people or whatever, and my family among them. It's like I lived as a child with my great-grandfather, for a year. I think one of the most memorable experiences I have in reference to the res is living with my great-grandfather, and my mother left me with him when I was in the 2nd grade in order to have some exposure to him and to have a male figure in my life or whatever, because my father wasn't around.
Yeah.
And he had an outhouse, and he had no indoor plumbing. He had a spring in the back of a cabin that he built himself that we lived in. It was a 3-room cabin. He later added on, there was a kitchen in the back. That made the 3rd room, whatever. But this, he built this cabin himself, had no, the only electricity we had in there was, he had like a light bulb in the living room. And I think he did have one plug-in for like this old radio, it had a wooden outer casing and had these giant bulbs. So the back of it was open and had these giant bulbs in it, and I remember that as a child or whatever else. But he lived on top of a mountain, and where he lived at, I could step into the front yard and I could look down and see and hear the Oconaluftee River, which runs through the reservation. And I think some of my all-time favorite memories of Cherokee and the res and growing up on the res or whatever is when I lived with him. And I just, he was he was really a unique person in that he was born in 1876, so he was he was old when I was as a child when I moved in with him or whatever. But he was a very strong, physically strong man for his age and all. And what I loved was he would sit down, and I think that's where I took some early interest in the history of various things or whatever. And he would talk about what it was like in the 1800s on the reservation. And he would talk about, I remember one story in particular where he talked about when he saw his first car tracks and how it scared him to death because he thought it was like where two big snakes had been crawling, he said,
Yeah.
And, but he was also addiction. I mean, the whole lifestyle has gone down through the generations as well because he was a moonshiner. And he had served federal time after being busted for making moonshine. And also one of my grandparents was a bootlegger. I remember that. I don't remember my great-grandfather being a moonshiner because that was long before I was born. But one of my grandparents was a bootlegger or whatever. And it was just that whole lifestyle that distribution of things that don't need to be distributed
Right.
was common fare on the res or whatever. There were a lot of bootleggers when I was a kid on the res or whatever, and that's and I have memories of where being taken to with a male member to the some of these bootleggers and hanging out or whatever, and listening to them sit around and just tell stories about the res and about each other and going back and forth between English and Cherokee, so.
Yeah, so, but that kind of like brings me to something as I listen to you talk. There was not a lot of economic advantages in Cherokee on the reservation, and and it's like you said, they resorted to moonshining and doing things like it's probably a dumb question, but that really brought a lot of people to addiction, to substance use disorder, right? Because let me just run this by you. So when I was a kid, when I was a little kid, one of the places that my aunt and my mom would take us almost every summer was to Maggie Valley. I had some people out there, but we'd go to Cherokee.
Right.
And I used to think it was just the coolest place in the world. I mean, oh my God, we're going to Cherokee. But now looking at it, I'm like, man, there was not a lot for y'all. I mean, as a little kid, I think it's kind of cool to watch an Indian dance.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, maybe it wasn't so cool, right? I mean, there wasn't a lot for you. There wasn't much for you guys there. And so you guys were very susceptible. Is that a pretty good analogy?
Yeah, you touched on something for me that triggered a thought or whatever. As far as when I was a kid, you don't see it that much anymore. But when tourists would come into Cherokee or whatever, they'd see the guys dancing in native costumes, and of course, a lot of times these native costumes were not Cherokee; they were like Plains, tribes or whatever.
This did not come from the Cherokee.
They were not. The headdress was not a Cherokee headdress.
So you guys were playing us. Is that what you're saying? I love it, man.
And these guys were out there doing this for money because they had to have.
That's right.
I mean, I hear people now that say, "Oh well," but they weren't native costumes. They were like, doing it. Yeah, they were doing it for money. They had to make a living. I mean,
that's right.
They had to pay their bills. They had families, and there was the job opportunities were so extremely limited that there was, like you said, I mean, there were very few options available or whatever. So I can't, I was talking with someone about this the other day, and I told them, I said, hey, look, I can't judge somebody for this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because this person was traditional this and traditional that, and yeah, but this is not this and this is not that. And I said, hey, look, people were doing what they needed to do in order to survive.
Yeah.
And,
and we were, I guess I can say, we as white people were loading up in our station wagons and going up there and thinking, oh, this is cool, and buying a pair of. But like I said, looking back, it's like, oh, and I go through there today, and it's really not. It's just, I don't know. It's not that entertaining to me. I especially getting to know you on the level that I know you, and to learn about the reservation and a little bit about the Cherokees. It's like, I don't think that people need to be dancing on corners for money, right? I mean, it's just. Anyway, that's just
right.
That's just how I feel, and I think you feel that way too when we talk.
Yeah.
And so you grew up out there, and then you're going to have to kind of guide me through this. So you came off of the reservation, and you came into living in communities, right?
Yeah.
Did you come from the reservation to Greenville? Was that your first
yes,
go?
we came. We had been living off you want to say off, you might a mile or two off the reservation, but no, we were living very close to the reservation when we came down here, when we moved down here, and that's why. And once again, the job opportunity thing is the reason that my mother relocated to Greenville. Right. And because my mother and father had divorced when I was 6 years old. My father was a functional addict in a lot of ways. Whatever, he was addicted to alcohol, and both my father and mother, whatever, by the way, are part Cherokee, and both of them are part Scott Irish or whatever, because there was a lot of the Scott Irish that migrated to the Appalachians. That they were the primary ones that mingled and mixed and with the Cherokee or whatever. So he was, but he was. The thing about it is, my father. I mean, even though he was just so much like a lot of the other guys on the res, but he hated the res. I mean, he would not tell nobody that that's where we were from or that's where we lived. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was there was a stigma behind it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You're from the res. You must you must be one of them drunk. But I'm glad you made it to Greenville.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
it's definitely different culture.
Did you start? I mean, and I know you speak openly. Like, did your addiction start? It started in Cherokee, though, right? And then
my first. I think it wasn't until after I'd come into meetings that I heard the term addictive personality, and I firmly believe I have. I mean, that just the light went off for me there. When I first come to meetings, people saying addict didn't really. I thought, well, I guess you are. That was my thinking. I guess you are, Yeah. But when I heard the term addictive personality, I thought, that's me. That's me. And I think that mine really kicked in. And I think I was obsessive compulsive in a lot of different areas, in a lot of different ways, long before I ever got into drugs or whatever. And but I do remember my mother taking me. I had. Upset stomach and take me to the drugstore in Bryson City, North Carolina, which is right outside the res, and taking and getting a substance called Paragoric, which is
what is that?
It's a opiate derivative. It's
oh boy.
It's really I just don't even see how it was legal back then or whatever. But you'd go in and get it without a prescription or whatever, and it was like a dark brown bottle, and it kind of had I'll never forget today I'll never forget the taste, where it had kind of like I like the taste like a licorice taste to it or whatever else. But I have on my Facebook page posted pictures of the bottles the way they looked back then with the Paragoric and everything. It was amazing how people my age and older would come forward and say, "Oh, wow, I really remember that," and I remember, oh my God, I forgot about that. I mean, so.
Do you think that was your first? I don't. Do you think that? I mean, is that what got you?
You definitely. It's definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's like. I don't know if the very first thing that ever. I mean, as far as triggering it or whatever, what sticks out in my mind is getting drunk at the age of 9.
Yeah.
My aunts were babysitting and I got drunk on beer, whatever else, at age 9, whatever, and they were going to rat on me. They were going to tell my mother was working 2 jobs in order to pay the bills and everything. It's like when your mom comes back, we're going to tell her because they were having their friends in, and I was like stealing the beer or whatever and drinking it, going in the other room drinking it, whatever. And I said, well, if you tell on me, I'm going to tell my mother y'all had a party while she was gone, whatever. So I basically blackmailed and got away with it, whatever. So I was drinking liquor by the time I was 13, smoking pot by the time I was 16,
And that led to walking down the road with those bell-bottom pants.
Yeah, that was later. Yeah, when I moved here, this was in 1971 and 2. Everybody talks about 1969, but the thing about it is 1969 did not reach South Carolina until the summer of 72. And I had at that time in 1972, I had these bell-bottom pants with all these different color swirls in them. It looked like more like puke, really. And it's like, and they had these huge crushed velvet, blue crushed velvet cuffs at the bottom of them, 2-tone patent leather stacks that I wore or whatever.
And you would walk down the road
and I'd have this musketeer-looking blousy top with, hair down my back or whatever else. Yeah, I went through that stage. I sure did. Yeah. Yeah. Drove a 1972, I think it was a 72 Pinto.
But for a while you didn't drive, though. You ended up having to walk or something in the bell-bottom pants.
Yeah.
Lost your car, lost your license.
I was really an oddity, I guess, at that time in Pickens County. We were living in Pickens County at that time, living in Davisville, and a lot of people, they just didn't, especially the older people, didn't really
appreciate this attire.
That was kind of, it's like, he's weird, he's different, yeah.
But, so when did you kind of realize, though, that I got to do something different? Like, I don't know. How did I
hit my bottom?
Yeah, if you want to say it that way.
Okay, it was like an awakening for me. It's like an awareness, I guess would be the proper word, or whatever. Was in January the 13th of 1980. I mean, the funny thing about it is I've gone through stages where I had stayed clean before, but I've done different things. It's like I tried the educational cure. I went to school for a while, stayed clean, and then I ended up going back, and then I got into a diving accident or whatever, and ended up in the hospital, ended up using again, where it's like, the religious cure, went to church, and and I'm not by no means saying that these I feel like whatever reason you stay clean is a good reason if you're staying clean, and I had tried a lot of different things, and I really had emotionally sunk to an all-time low January 13th, 1980, and I just basically told God, it's like, hey, look, I have a really bad feeling about this. I just had an impending sense of doom. I had been locked up before, never served any time, and I'm not saying that I shouldn't have, but I was living in behind Furman University's golf course at that time, and I just prayed about it. And then after I got through praying, I got scared because I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought, well, okay, you made this decision to change your life. I mean, you want to change your life. You want God's help to change your life, whatever. How's that going to happen? I mean, it's like, how am I going to... And I feel today like God answered that prayer, because the following day, a guy that a Vietnam vet I used to use drugs with for a number of years on the weekend came to my house, and he said, hey, look, I just... your next door neighbor I'm friends with, and he said the police were here yesterday, and I was wondering what happened, and I had not seen this guy in a long time, And I said, well, yeah, they were here. I said, I was having my uncle and my brother kicked out of my house because they were doing drugs in my house, and they were like trying to sell drugs to other people out of my house. And I said, and I've decided, I can't live that lifestyle no more. That's not, I need to clean up my act or whatever. I just have this overwhelming impending sense of doom, and something's got to change here or whatever. And he said, wow, it's amazing that you said that, because your friend and I, the reason I was over at his house was he and I just got out of the treatment, out of rehab down in Columbia, South Carolina, whatever. And he said, we're getting ready to go to this recovery meeting or whatever. And I said, really? I said, what's that? I mean, I still didn't quite understand what he was talking about. And he said, Narcotics Anonymous. And like so many people, I understood the word narcotics, but I didn't understand the word anonymous. And I said, where's this at, man? It's like, and he said, oh, it's at MIP, Marshall Pickett's or whatever, where they do the outpatient counseling services. And I said, okay. I said, hey, I can deal with that. I've been there before, and I had been, because I had been disruptive in school here or whatever, and they ended up, I was mandated. I had to go for counseling there as a teenager.
So you knew how to get there.
Because I would get up and just walk out of class, and I wasn't old enough to quit school or anything like that. And they just, I'd get up in the middle of the class and pack my books. It's like, it's time to go home. And they'd see me walking across the field, toward the house. And so they just really thought, something's wrong with him. We need, so then, and they went, I guess, whoever it was, whoever was involved with it they talked to my mother and said, look, Lee, you got to do something. He's got to be in school. And but they mandated me. I had to go out there for outpatient counseling, and it had been, that was when I was, about 14 years old. And so that was at 14. And then I overdosed at 16 and ended up in their in the back there where they have the inpatient, the locked unit or whatever else. I was back there for a week one time as a drug overdose at I was 15 or 16.
15, 16, and, you overdosed.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I overdosed, they thought it was a suicide attempt or whatever, and it might have been to a certain extent or whatever, but it was me just wanting to block everything out, to just, I just reached that point where I felt like I had to have some kind of relief, and I just couldn't get high enough to get it, So I ended up overdoing it,
But Dee, when you talk about when you reach that point and you're asking God for help, it wasn't like, well, you maybe thought there were treatment centers. There wasn't. This was 19. There wasn't
that
much.
Was 19, yeah,
1980.
Right,
There's not anything for people who are suffering from substance use disorder, we call it, or addiction, or whatever it was. You were just like, God, help me. And all of a sudden, these guys come and say, well, there's these meetings. Yeah. And you were like, oh. And I know where Marshall Pickens is. And that brings me to tell us a little bit about NA in Greenville back then, and where did it come from? I know it just kind of organically sprouted up, kind of, sort of. I don't know.
Well, it's like, people talk about coincidence, and I think I feel like it was divine intervention that I was invited to my first meeting within 24 hours. But another quote-unquote coincidence was when they took me to that meeting, I didn't realize it at the time, but that was I was later told, by others that this is, after I got to, this is the very first, it was the very first NA meeting in what is now known the Carolina region, the North and South Carolina, whatever. And it came about as a result of a psychiatrist that worked with mental health here or whatever, who had felt the need that for an NA meeting here, and I don't know exactly how he found. Well, I do know how he found out about NA. He was in Atlanta, and a guy by the name of Ron R. was doing a little. They had this recovery thing going on where all these different people had their booths and everything, letting the public know what they were about and all. And Ron R. was doing a PI thing, public information thing for NA or whatever. And this guy said, "Hey, look, I think we need this in Greenville, or whatever. And if you're willing to relocate to Greenville, I'll give you a place to stay, food to eat. You can drive my car, whatever I can do for you to help you out." That's how strongly I feel that we need an NA meeting in Greenville.
So a guy by the name of Ron R. brought it from Atlanta.
Right.
Because, and we talked about this the other day. Of course, it started, Narcotics Anonymous started in California. Right? Originally started in California by when we were
Sun Valley, California.
Sun Valley, California. Somehow it got to Texas. And then
that's what I've been told.
And then the way that it got to the East Coast was via Atlanta. And my understanding is, and correct me if I'm wrong, is it was they brought it to a treatment center there. A guy by the name of Motorcycle Ed was involved with that. And then this guy brought it from Atlanta along with another gentleman that we know, right?
Yeah. From what I've been told is there was a lady in Texas that the lady who worked in the field in Atlanta who was in recovery, Pat S. had been in contact with her, and she Pat had been involved in AA or whatever, but it was told by this lady about NA, and she said, "Wow, it's like we need that here," or whatever. So Pat then started NA in Atlanta. Her and her husband Chuck were the first two, and then a guy by the name of Boaz, and then a few members later, then it came to Motorcycle Ed that you were talking about. Yeah. And so this guy who came up here, he'd only been clean a year.
Okay.
He relocated
from
here.
Atlanta.
From Atlanta, Ron. Yeah. Yeah.
So the very first meeting of Narcotics Anonymous was actually at Marshall Pickens.
Yeah.
The first. Okay.
Yep.
And what year was that? 1980.
That was in January the 14th of 1980.
You know the date, January 14th.
Because that was also my first meeting.
Oh, no wonder you know.
That's right.
Is that where you picked up a white chip?
That's correct.
Right. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah. There was at that time there was no official Narcotics Anonymous had no official chips of their own like AA did or whatever, and so we had poker chips they give out. So they give me a white poker.
They
chip.
gave you a white poker. Do you still have that?
Yep.
I know you do.
Sure do. Yeah.
I know you do. We've talked about that. I have not seen it.
Right.
And I want to.
It just says Hoyle on it.
It just says what?
Hoyle. Yeah.
Is that what's that?
Yeah, on the
it's
outside.
Just a white poker chip.
Yeah, just a white poker chip. That's all it is.
Oh my God,
yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
And they were talking about the subject topic was, that's funny. I just asked God for a way out. Subject topic was God's we understand God. And I said I was scared. I mean, it come around, went around the circle one by one, got to me. I said I don't know if I don't know if I believe in God or not, because I didn't know what I was in the middle of. I really didn't fully understand what these people were about.
Yeah.
All I knew is that during the meeting, I heard this term addictive personality, and it was like bing, bing, bing.
Bing.
Hey, whoa,
that was it for you. That was it. Yeah.
That and the fact that I got there right before the meeting and run into a guy that I used to use with, who was there at that meeting, that I had not seen. There was the guy that took me to the meeting was a guy I used to use with. The guy that lived next door that we rode with to the meeting, he was someone that I used to work with. And there was a guy there in the back just prior to the meeting that I talked to or whatever that I used to use with. It kind of helped me in the fact that I saw several people that I knew about prior to this first meeting, people that I had gotten high with who were also, they already had a little bit of clean time. I didn't.
They had been hanging out at Marshall Pickens or whatever. Marshall Pickens says, hey, we're going to have this NA meeting or whatever. And then they brought you, and I guess, and I was thinking about this as you were sharing. It's funny how you used to talk about when you first went to meetings, you thought they were talking about you because somebody just got out of detox, and then somebody else would be in denial.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a friend of mine, he used to say, addicts are very sensitive people. They they're hypersensitive or whatever else. And it's like, you say 5, they hear 10.
Right.
And that's an idea or whatever. And then one person was talking about, I just got out of D. I never knew what treatment was. Didn't know what detox was. Didn't know what nothing was prior to coming into NA or whatever. All I knew is I'd prayed for a way out. And apparently that prayer had been answered. And it's like, but I'd hear one person said detox, and I heard like DEE, detox, and that's how my first name's spelled, DEE, like detox, denial, and all this stuff. And it's like anytime they say something start off with the D word, like I thought, well, are they stressing the vowels on purpose? Like. Because that's the way that people would do on the res when we get loaded or whatever. It's like the higher we got, the more the native people tend to stress their vowels.
Yeah.
A, E, I, O, and U gets very long after a few drinks. So yeah.
It's so true, but it makes me think about, even in my personal recovery, it's amazing that when we become completely willing, and we pray to whatever, is that it's amazing how everything came. Like I'm just wrapping my head around this.
Yeah.
You asked God for help. There was no Narcotics Anonymous.
No.
It wasn't like, there you didn't know where a treatment center was. You didn't.
No.
When it came to detox, you thought they were talking about you.
I thought they were stressing the vowels and looking over at me because they were trying to, point me in that direction or something.
Yeah. I mean, it was, but when you said, God, I need help,
right?
He sent you the first Narcotics Anonymous meeting, and you picked up the first chip in what we now know as
the first Narcotics Anonymous meeting in the Carolina region of North and South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that was over 41 years ago. That'll be in January. If I'm still alive in January, that'll be 42 years. I'll celebrate 42 years in recovery. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's been.
And so, we've talked. I sent Todd, our producer, a picture, and it was of you and Jimmy K.
Okay.
Did Jimmy K, I guess Jimmy K, and just for our audience, Jimmy K was the founder of Narcotics Anonymous, and
that's correct.
So you say, did he have a kind of a play in bringing Narcotics Anonymous here? I mean, he knew it was happening, right?
He was there for us. Yes, when we got started here, we didn't know really what to do or how to do as far as getting it all down pat on whether we're doing the meeting correctly or not.
Yeah.
And we would call him. He was at World. He was over the office, World Service office. And we would call him and talk to him. And if we didn't talk to him, we'd talk to Bob B., whose stories in the book.
I remember Bob B.
The only NA meeting in the world. So, so we would, I loved him to death. I thought, well, if you go find out what this is really about, you need to go right to the top.
Yeah.
So, I think the last year of his life or whatever, I talked to him probably. I used to keep my phone bills I kept them because I was making calls at that time in reference to having him come out and speak at a convention on the reservation. This was in 1985, and this was the last place that he was last convention that he was scheduled to speak at before he died, and he died within.
So when something was like, you're like, we're having these meetings, and by this time, this is getting to be a lifeline for you, and you're like, we need to make sure we're doing this doggone thing right.
That's correct.
And so you're beelining to Jimmy K.
Right. The other guys were too. The other guys.
The other guys. And so at this point, now it's time to grow.
Right.
Right. And so I guess we start. I guess with Jimmy's guidance.
Yeah.
We start to talk about, okay, we got these things called home groups, right?
Right.
And so, and we were talking about this a little bit. So you're talking about a lot of passionate, hard-headed people that think they, right?
Right.
Let's just say this. There's some strong personalities that are getting this thing off the ground.
Absolutely. No doubt about it.
Okay, so what were some of the first, like, what was maybe the first home group, and what were some of the challenges within that as we started to kind of
some of the challenges were we didn't know what to vote on, or where we didn't know what was acceptable or wasn't, and just for like we had talked earlier, whatever we wanted to get everything in writing. We had we voted on stuff just so we'd have it in writing,
right,
and we could make it an official part of our quote unquote group conscience. And so they were things that we voted on back then simply because we didn't we wanted to clear it up. Whereas today, a lot of things that we voted on back then are today taken for granted. Nobody even gives it a second thought about voting on it.
Right. What were some of the things that y'all, if you don't mind, what were some of the things that y'all had to vote on?
One thing that we voted on was whether or not a gay person could sit in the meeting. It's like,
right,
and that wasn't done to shut nobody out. That was done in order to be inclusive, to make it clear that we had it in the minutes that if you were gay, that if somebody come in, and had a problem with it, then that was their problem.
Nice.
And that was the same way with we some of the guys we sat around, because there were very few women in at that time. It's like, hey, how are we going to deal with? What about when women start pouring in here? How are we going to deal with that? I mean, and then it's like, how are we going to deal? What about, because there was there was one other native guy there when we first got started at Clean and Green, but there was no black people. And so how are we going to do this? What are we going to do with that first guy that comes through the door, the first black person? It's like, and what if they're looking for a black sponsor? It's like, how we going to address it? How we going to meet their needs when they come in, or whatever? How are we going to meet the needs of these younger people? Because back then, the youth in recovery, if you were 40 years old, you were considered young in the meeting or something like that. Because a lot of these other people gone to other 12-step meetings where the average age was a lot older. Yeah, and so it's like, how are we going to meet the needs of a 15-year-old?
So y'all were, it was a lot about like diversity, inclusion. Like y'all, when you first started telling me that, we voted on whether, homosexuals, and I'm like, huh? I mean, I was kind of taken back. No, it's not that it's not that anybody was against that.
Right.
We wanted to make sure that they felt welcome. We wanted to make sure that no matter age, race, sexual identity, creed, lack of religion, whatever, that we wanted to build a big tent for everybody. Right. We wanted, as kind of the founders of the first meetings here, I guess, wanted to make sure that everybody felt comfortable, that everybody felt included, that everybody got that hug. Right. And it's amazing that was such a priority for you guys.
And another part of it was in true anonymity, we were just going to say that when we introduced ourselves, we were just going to say we were an addict. Because when we very first started, we go around the room. Some people say, I'm a pothead, I'm a junkie, I'm a speed freak, I'm a whatever.
Wow.
And it's like, and we had to just get that drop by the wayside and just say, okay, let's just be addicts, Let's just be
and I know. And I know there's some controversy around even the addict term now, but y'all were like, no, we are one common entity. When you come in here, it's not about your age, race, any of that. It was amazing the way that y'all molded that. So the first home group was in the Carolina regions. In the Carolina region.
Clean and Green.
How did it get that name?
Got that name because there were three of them submitted. One of them was Phoenix, the other one was Oasis, and Clean and Green, and Clean and Green won out.
And how did it?
And that was the guy who submitted the name Clean and Green was a guy who had just got out of prison by the name of JT, who had served 5 years in prison. and he was there at a few meetings that first month, and really never saw him after that. But he was the one that submitted. He's the one that submitted that.
We're all trying to get clean.
Clean and green. What does that mean? Why do you say that? And he said, well, because we're all trying to get clean, and yet at the same time we're all green. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That meeting's still around, isn't it?
That's correct.
It is still around.
Yeah.
And what were some of the early challenges with service? Were there a lot of coffee pots and resentments?
Well, there was like I said before, there was some strong personalities, and it was the thing about. But the thing about it is, in the early days, it was it's welcome people to a meeting, and we're glad you're here and all that. But we were just we were drafting people into service. I mean, so you come through the door, it's like, yeah, okay, we're glad you're here, we're glad you're clean, and have a seat. But by the way, this month you're going to be making the coffee,
right?
Or next month you're going to be setting out chairs, or back then it was smoking, set out ashtrays. It was taken for granted that if you came in, you're going to do service work too, and that's kind of faded by with the increase in numbers in the fellowship. That's kind of fallen by the wayside to a certain degree.
That was when I first came in recovery. That was my first job. Yeah. Was coffee maker.
Yeah.
And they, and I would be like, well, I don't want to go to a meeting today. Oh, damn, but I got to go make the coffee. Yeah. So there was a reason that my predecessors, such as yourself, had me do that. Okay. Because and back then we used to smoke in meetings, so we'd have to clean up ashtrays too. Yeah. So it was like service was the first thing. Yeah. And I guess the coffee pots and resentments help to create more home groups, right? Because you ain't doing it right over here, and I don't like the principles before personal thing. All this stuff would happen, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm gonna go start. Like I know a dude that he's started so many doggone meetings, and it's okay, But you saw a lot of that, huh?
Yeah. There was a guy that started another group. As a matter of fact, New Freedom was started as resentment toward me because the guy had said, I'm tired of people coming in here, wear blue jeans and T-shirts and long hair or whatever else. We need to look more responsible. We need to look clean, he said.
I know who this is.
And it's like, and the thing about it is,
we need to look more clean.
When he started that first meeting, he started Our Lady of the Rosary down on Augusta Road. I went and got the coffee pot out of our home group and took that down there to him. Extra coffee pot. I gave him coffee cups or whatever else. I said, and showed him that I was going to support him in that, even though he was had a certain amount of animosity toward me or whatever. I felt that what I felt was this is great that we're
growing.
We're growing to have additional meetings, because that was a big thing. I mean, we had really. I mean, we were in order to get the word out and have for public information and everything. We had people like Ron and me. Ron, everywhere we go, he'd say, he was, and if I was with him or another guy, he'd say, "Hey, guess what? We're recovering." We'd be standing in the middle of a grocery store. We went to a spa one time.
So y'all recruiting are recruiting people. You didn't know any better, right?
Yes. We were sharing that we were about the fellowship, that we were in the fellowship, in order that people would know, because we're trying to get the word out, and we didn't have, had very limited people as far as being able to get the word out. But Ron was just unreal. I mean, he was just it was a place called European Health Spa, and he would hey, I'm over there on one of the machines trying to, improve myself physically or whatever, and he's over there telling the instructor, guess what, I'm a drug addict.
and we got these meetings.
But I'm in recovery, and we have these meetings, and if you know anybody that has a drug problem and they want to go to these meetings, you call me, and here's my phone number,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, used to, the meetings were so small that if you didn't show up, they would come looking for you. I remember missing. The numbers were so small that if you missed a meeting, you were missed. I mean, really. I mean, people, and I've had there were only 6 or 8 of us in the meeting, and they come to my house, knock on the door, and it's like, we come to get you. I mean, I remember walking one time, hitchhiking to a meeting in the rain, and I was sitting there. I was so embarrassed because I was sitting in the chair, and there was a puddle of water on the floor under me or whatever, and I was so embarrassed by that. One guy looked and said, you talk about willingness to go to any length. I feel like if anybody's willing to go to any length, he is, because, he walked and hitchhiked in the rain in order to get here for this meeting and whatever else. And so the next time that it rained, just prior to a meeting, they showed up the door, knocked on my door. One of them had a cup of coffee in their hand. The other one, they said, hey, we're here to pick you up. They opened the back door up. I got in the back of the car. I went off with them to the meeting.
It is funny you talk about that. It makes me think about, because I got in recovery in Myrtle Beach, and back then I remember there were 3 home groups.
Yeah.
There was Hugs Not Drugs. There was a meeting at the Carolina. It was weird, man. It was like a meeting, but the patients came there too at the, and I don't even know if we should have been doing that, but we were. And then there was another group there, New Day. Yeah. And there were only 3 home groups, and I'm going to say this was in the late 80s. When I first started coming around, it's now known as it was known as the Sun City area then too. And so, there was probably about 15 people. So if you weren't at the meeting, where were you? Mm-hmm. And they would call you. Yeah. Are you all right? Yeah. I mean, you were like, there were 10 or 15 people. Right. And if you were homeless, like, how can we help him? I mean, right. It was this very, very small community. And I understand, and that's why I was like, where did NA go from Greenville? It went to Asheville. It went to Asheville from here. Simultaneously, some stuff was going on in Myrtle Beach. You were telling me there was a lady by the name of Polly. And Polly had gotten in touch with Jimmy K. Jimmy K got in touch with Neil B, with you guys, so to speak. And I think she came out here to see what a meeting was run like or whatever.
March of 1980,
Yep, March of 1980 came out here, and simultaneously everything was kind of happening, but it's funny that those founding people. I don't remember Polly, right? But I remember a guy named Billy, right? I remember a guy named Andy A, and I remember a lady named Jude, and they were there. They were there when the same thing happened to me. When I became when I was sitting out in a parking lot and I got out of the car, and this was October 21st, 1990. I came in a while after you, Dee, but it was and I was I was like, I don't want to go back in there and tell these people, that I've done it again, and I was getting ready to get back in the car, and there's a guy by the name of Bill O said, where are you going? But those were the people that were setting up the chairs for me. Right. Those were the people that handed me a cup of coffee. When he was the one that walked in with me, because I was not going back to that meeting. I was getting back in my car, and I was going to go kill myself. And the reason I know is because I just had this really peaceful feeling, and that it's finally over. This is the only way out for me. But it's funny how how you talked about when we became willing, that God just the moon and the stars just lined up for us, man. You know what I mean? Right. And those people were there. And then when I came here in 92, you were here, and it's just, I mean, it's just amazing to talk about all this. And so it went to Myrtle Beach, and then it went to Asheville.
Yeah. It went, from us, the guys from Asheville contacted World Service after Clean and Green had been here a year, and World Service sent them to us. They came down to visit. That was Milton B or whatever, and he came and attended a Clean and Green meeting. He had 5 years already in AA, and wow. And he said, and I'll never forget that the way he shared. He said, I have no problem with giving up 5 years of just abstaining from alcohol in order to practice complete abstinence. So he said, I'm throwing away my 5-year chip and I'm picking up a white one.
Yeah, I remember there was a guy, because there was always this controversy with AA, NA, or whatever, and there was this guy that would say, I'm here at this meeting because I have a problem with drugs. I am a drug addict, and it was like, I don't go to that other because I'm, and I don't say who that was, but he became a very, very important person in my recovery.
Well, a guy that helped me out was a guy in AA. When we first got started, I didn't know nothing about it. When they said, a lot of those, if you had any prior experience, you had to have it in AA because NA had not started yet.
Right.
And and I said, wait a minute, what's this called now? And they said, Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, you're taking me to one for just alcohol? And it's like, I said, yeah. I said, this is weird. It's like, I come into this and it's for everything, and you're taking me one to alcohol? And I said, yeah. And it's like, but there was a guy by the name of Squire J, and Squire was one of the really old. He was. I don't know. He had not long after I got clean. I think he celebrated like 30 years now or something. But anyways, it was at an AA meeting. He's like, and he was the one that really helped me. We were standing outside, and Squire said, Dee said, you know what? Said, do you really want NA to grow? And I said, yes. Absolutely, I do. I really want to see it grow. I want to see it. And I think that at that time, there were only 17 AA meetings in Greenville.
That's not a lot.
It jumped from 17, right after I got clean, where it jumped from 17 to 19. They were like, so, but he goes, he said, if you want NA to grow, you're going to have to be there or whatever. So I said, you're right. And I had no way of getting around, and I was riding with these people to AA meetings, but from day one, my commitment, because I come from the opposite direction. These other guys had already been exposed to other stuff prior to NA, and I understood that or whatever. But me, I had come in and found a home right off the bat at NA, and I didn't want to go nowhere else. But even though I really did like the people. There were people. All our NA meetings were open meetings, and I met people from all different kinds of 12-step fellowships that came to NA to see what it was about, whatever. But he said, "Hey, look, if you got to support your own family before you help your neighbor, And so if you want your family to grow, then you're gonna have to be there to feed them, And in order to get that spiritual feeding, anyone, you have an extreme shortage of people that's got any time, because you're just getting started here in Greenville or whatever. So you need to be there for the next person coming through the door. So.
And I started to do this. I don't even know, how many meetings there are in the Carolina region now. Yeah. There's no telling. Hundreds? I tried to even look at it. There's there's a bunch of areas underneath it, underneath the Carolina region.
Oh yeah. It's being able to work on the service structure was a big thing for us, or whatever. Build up enough groups to form an area, that was the next level, and then build up enough areas to form a region. But we done it backwards. We were one of the in order to be there for people who were contacting World Service that were in the Carolinas, we formed a region first. We were one of the earliest regions. We were the 8th registered region in the Fellowship of Narcotics Anonymous. And the reason we done that, it was kind of like a donut region, I call it, because we had the region, and then we filled the interior with areas. And
there are 20 areas. There are 20. Can you imagine that now?
Yeah, it's been a while since I served on the region. I
know. But there's 20 areas.
Yeah.
No telling how many. I don't even want to count the meetings underneath the regions.
Yeah.
And it started with that meeting at Marshall Pickens, and Dee picked up a poker chip that he still got.
Yeah.
And he's still a big part of a whole lot of people's lives. I don't think sometimes, I know you're getting older, man. We all are. We both are. But I don't think you realize it's sometimes, and I don't think I realize, it's like can you wrap your head around it sometimes? Like when you go to a convention or something, like you know, like you go to a convention in Asheville and you're like, oh my God, there's hundreds of people here. And you go to a convention in Greenville and it started with that guy that came, like it's like it all kind of started. It didn't all start with you, I get that, but it started with Dee asked God for help.
I wouldn't have picked up that white chip hadn't somebody already been there for me. Been there that.
There was someone there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who do you remember?
Like Neil B, because Neil B had he had got clean in NA in Atlanta in 1972, I think it was.
In NA or AA?
I think originally he came into AA and then he went into he was the 9th member of Narcotics Anonymous after they got started in Atlanta.
In Atlanta,
yeah.
which came here and from.
And he'd been living here a while before NA got started. He'd already been here.
Yeah. And y'all started kind of meeting at his house and doing some stuff.
And he done a meeting. It
was the first recovery community organization.
70 in the spring/summer '78. He done NA meetings at his apartment, and there were some of the other guys were professionals too that that had been going to AA or whatever, but they had gone through, they'd been exposed to NA and treatment in Atlanta, like Woody M and some of those guys, so.
Amazing.
But I miss the intimacy. I mean, I love the growth of NA, but I really, in a lot of ways, I miss the intimacy as well that we had back
I do.
then.
It's so different now. But you know what? It's like Neil B says, these are the good old days, but it is so I mean, now we've got recovery community organizations and recovery housing and it is different now, but it reaches so many more people because unfortunately, not many people are just going to go, hey, I'm going to go to an NA or AA or whatever, anonymous meeting. Right. But yeah, it's been, I'm glad we did this.
Yeah.
We've been needing to do this just to have just to go through this.
Yeah.
And I know I love you. And I appreciate you.
Yeah.
And I love to talk to you.
Yeah.
And you mean the world to me in so many ways.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you doing this today.
A lot of my talking has been at conventions. I spoke at a lot of different conventions, wherever. So this here is something new and different to me, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just sitting down and just talking.
But I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it.
Appreciate it. And appreciate everyone tuning in the Recovery First podcast. We'll see you next week. Take us out, Todd, with Ask 'em Studios. This is Mike Todd with the South Carolina Recovery Housing Association. I would like to thank Challenges, Inc., the Recovery Advocacy Project, and the Clinton Foundation for helping us get naloxone to all recovery houses in South Carolina.